Hello, I'm Royal Seely, aka Mignonette, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm very excited to be talking about Baby the Star Shine Bright and one of their re-releases for their classical series, Ribbon Ribbon Gelato. There are a couple things I want to explore in this video. So if you're unfamiliar, Ribbon Ribbon Gelato originally came out in 2004, I believe. And as part of their classical series that they're doing now, Baby the Star Shine Bright is taking these old school and mid school solid pieces and re releasing them on their website, sometimes adding additional colors as well. Now, if you are familiar with these re releases at all, you can see that Baby has a lot of poof going on when they model them typically. So, if we were to look at the Milfood re release, the 2003 version of the JSK is looking pretty minimal when it is on this model in terms of the amount of poof that we're seeing. However, the 2022 release looks quite big in comparison. And there's a couple of reasons why this would be the case. If there was a change to the cut, more likely they have just added a bunch of additional fabric. And that's not a bad thing, not at all. But when I was seeing these old school and old school style re-releases, I started to wonder if it would be possible to coordinate them in a low poof way similar to how they were originally styled and released. Low poof styles have been more of my interest as of late, as they're just a lot easier to wear in the day-to-day. When I wear some of my other pieces, it can be a little bit more difficult to navigate around stores or on streets, when I also have to be mindful of the amount of petticoat space I'm taking up. So with this in mind, I knew I wanted to get a re-release and test out that idea, I guess. Can it low poof? Besides that, I also wanted to try styling this piece in a couple of different ways. The typical way that we would see an old school style piece styled. So these pieces usually have a solid color and then lace. Either the lace would be the same color, or generally speaking, most likely it's going to be white on that solid color. And the color that I would usually see corded with would be a white or ivory blouse, white or ivory ruffle top socks, sometimes black with white ruffles. So very simple, very elegant, and I started to wonder if there was a way to cord these older pieces in a way that would be a bit different from what I normally associate them with. So I went onto Baby's website and I narrowed it down between two releases. I ended up going for the Ribbon Ribbon Gelato Sundress re-release from 2023. If you watched my previous video on KCON, you may recognize that this is what I wore to the tea party at KCON. What I found attractive about this piece was the lace. Baby always has really beautiful lace. It's usually very unique as well. And it shows the same rose lace that I've seen on previous pieces, such as the Elizabeth OP. I also like that it had this halter neck sun dress type tie that you can put around your neck, as well as additional straps that would take the load off of your neck and distribute it onto your shoulders as well. I also liked that it was a bit more funky in the patterning, so we have a piece that right down the middle, it's pretty flat. You get some pin tucks and then you get a row of lace. But on the sides, which I found really interesting, there's these row of ruffles. So not a piece that I have in terms of construction already within my wardrobe, and overall just very pretty. I also liked these satiny ribbon ties. I thought that was a really cool touch. So first I'm going to start with the styling, and the initial way that I styled it was how I wore it for the KCON tea party. I got 3 pieces when I was ordering this. So in addition to the Ribbon Ribbon Gelato JSK, I also got a pair of baby socks that had the white ruffle, and laced through it was a red ribbon. I also got the Usakumya headdress with the detachable ear bows, and that was white and red. I thought that would be a really nice way to tie into some of the other bunny themes that I have already. So this cord here that I'm showing from KCON is all of those together in one. It worked just about how I imagined it would, and I felt very wonderful in it. As something I wanted to note about this is that because of the satin nature of the chest bows, I had a hard time keeping them tied, and throughout any time I've worn it really, they would find ways to unravel. I have some older Metamorphose blouses that have a satin-like ribbon, but it has been sewn through the cross section here in order to maintain that tied shape. So it is possible that at some point I will end up sewing through that as well, just so I can keep that nice bow shape without having to constantly retie it. So that is the way that when I see an old school JSK, that is how I expect it to be corded. I wanted to try and flex my cording muscles by cording this piece not using a white blouse or an ivory blouse. And this required me to do some more thoughtful thinking about how that would look and what that would look like. Luckily, Metamorphose released a blouse with caplet series, and it had a black blouse this time with white lace. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that is something that I wanted to try out. I stewed on it for quite a long time, and then eventually I ended up getting it secondhand. So here I have put together a coordinate of the black blouse with white lace, but that's not all I did. I also decided to take the time to show you the different layers of poof and how that can affect the overall visuals of this dress. Because when you add more fabric to a skirt, if you don't have adequate enough poof, it can end up muting some of the design. Now, since this is a solid piece, it may not be as much of an issue, but this does have that beautiful rose lace in the front, so I wanted to make sure that was not getting too hidden. So the first one I'll show you is something without any petticoat at all. So you can see here, it's pretty flat as a board, straight down. And given that I'm wearing one of my more voluminous wigs and I have these big wedges, it looks kind of weird and top heavy having the caplet and then not having that bell or petticoat poof to balance that. So that's what it looks like without any petticoat at all. And it's hiding a lot of the ruffle detail, it's hiding a lot of the lace detail that drew me to this piece. Compared to adding a 3-layer petticoat, so this is one of my smaller petticoats, and it is my go-to when I want to dress more casually, so oftentimes I will wear this to a meet if it's a more walking around style meet, just because it's a lot less heavy, it's a lot more comfortable. And when I see myself wearing this dress casually out and about, this is likely the petticoat I would wear. So it is a 3-layer Me Likes Tea petticoat, and it gives a little bit of volume. It's, in my opinion, enough that it fills out the skirt without it feeling too empty. There's definitely room that could be added, but I don't think it looks absolutely horrendous. And because of that, I will now talk more about my cording choice. So when Metamorphose Temp de Fille released this black X white blouse with caplet series, I already have 2 other colors of it. I have the previous release in antique white as well as pink with white lace. And I think the connecting factor here for why I feel like this works is this white lace connection. So this gives me ideas, especially since I have the pink version of this blouse. If I wanted to go outside of the white or ivory realm, I would feel very comfortable wearing that pink blouse and some pink ruffled lace top socks, which I already have as well. And I think that would be more of a romantic Valentine's Day coordinating idea. Up next, you get to see what it looks like with my most often worn high poof layer petticoat. So I believe this is a 5-layer rose petticoat from Me Likes Tea. It fills the skirt out nicely. The previous versions of no petty, 3-layer petty, now we are able to see this opening of roses a bit easier. I'm also going to rotate so you can see a bit what it looks like when you get a profile action, because a lot of the times what I find funny in these model shots that baby shows is the side view, and it looks like just like a tube with like a hard flare out to the side. So we're not quite at that level yet, but we are getting a little more poof. This is what I would wear to a big tea party like KCON, where I want to be poofier, but I also still want to be reasonable and a bit comfortable. And in general, I don't like to layer petticoats just because that's another layer. It's already quite hot, in addition to the stress that it can put on the body wearing it long term. So that's why I was very excited by the idea of seeing how big a poof I could get out of this Ribbon Ribbon Gelato re-release. And because of that, I stacked my actual poofiest petticoat underneath of this one to give it ample poof for the petticoat. At this point, I don't believe the skirt has any room left in it. It is completely filled with petticoat. Yes, it is showing all of the roses. There's no wrinkles or folds or anything from lack of space, but at the apex of the skirt around that rose line, it does start to bulge a bit. That could be from the size of the petticoat, but it could also be from the cut of the petticoat. The more layers you add, the more cupcake of a shape it tends to get to a petticoat. So enjoy this beautiful sight. So I feel extremely satisfied by this second coordinate as a way for me to wear an old school style piece, an old school re-release, and also put my own little flair in on it. And I definitely see myself trying to mix and match other blouses as well. I think the big trick for me is going to be looking at the lace of the blouse and making sure it aligns a bit more with the lace that is on the JSK itself. So white lace particularly, although I do think it'd be interesting to wear a white blouse with dark red lace. I'm not sure how that would look, but I would be curious to try it out. Now we have our third and final styling for this piece, and this is the most casual yet. When I think of old school, yes, the initial thought in terms of cording for me is a white or ivory blouse, but the second thing that I think of is wearing a band t-shirt with it as well. So I wanted to try that out for myself, and I definitely learned a bit about the type of blouse, or I suppose I should say band t-shirt cut, that I think would flatter a cording of an old school piece. I tend to wear my t-shirts a bit larger and looser. That's usually what's more comfortable for me. And because of that, I had to cuff the sleeves a bit. I felt like once they got too long, it didn't look as nice. And I also had to fold and roll up the hem of my t-shirt in order to be more in line with the waistline of the JSK. I don't think it's too bad of a look, especially for my first try of it. However, I think I would have picked a tighter fitting, shorter sleeved band t-shirt if I wanted to try this again. This was what I wore to go walking around in a local park. So it was something where I wanted to wear Lolita in a way that was going to be more fit for my day-to-day activities. And I feel like this did fit the bill. I felt very comfortable. I was wearing my Vans, my high top Vans as well. And it also allowed me to really play around with how I would style this and make it closer to what I wear day to day. Something I'm really excited about here is the cording of these romantic rose OTKs from Metamorphose. Again, old school pieces, I'm used to thinking of solid color socks to go with them. This is a patterned sock, although it is a knit fiber or knit fabric, and it has rose design. As for my headpiece, I took the detachable Usakumya ears that I wore for K-Con, and as part of that, red and white headdress from Baby, and I clipped them onto a black and white headdress from Baby as well, just to repeat that black, white, and red theme. I also wanted to make sure to add some gold accents as well, which I did a bit by having the underside of my hair visible, which is more of a bleach brassy color, at least at the time of recording that. I think the gold in the shirt mimics that as well, and it ties in nicely with my choice of Vans. The gold features in the Romantic Rose OTK. For this one, I wore my 3-layer classy A-line petticoat from Me Likes Tea. I think just because that one is so comfortable, this is an outfit I could wear a lot in my day-to-day. I feel like I could go to a concert in it and be very comfortable, walk around the park. It was really fun, and as someone that loves Lolita fashion, I want to wear it as much as I can, and part of that would be finding a way to wear these pieces in my day-to-day life, whether it is a more Lolita styling or a more not Lolita styling, but just using these pieces, appreciating these pieces, is what I want to do with them. And it's how I get to enjoy them more times throughout the year, because we cannot always go to a tea party, sadly. So on to the piece itself, I want to give my final thoughts. It's been released several times throughout the years, so there should be more than a few out there. I like the different colors that they have re-released this in. I believe they've had yellow added as well. And the halter necktie gives it such a beachy feeling that I could see courting this with an open toe shoe, like sandal wedge situation, similar to how I had seen in some of my older GLBs. I did get the red color, and I'm very excited to announce that it didn't bleed at all. I've thrown it in my wash a few times. No issues at all. It seems like a lot of the issues with red dyes in the past, particularly with big brands, seems to have died out in the 2010s. That isn't to say not to be careful, especially in prints. It might be a little bit more tricky, but as far as the solid pieces I've had that I've washed and have been more red dominant, no issues so far. I mentioned earlier that the ribbon in the front is very slippery. That means it constantly is untying throughout the course of a meet or an outing. And normally this isn't a problem. I would say that a lot of ties like that in general tend to slip. I've got these cute little ties on the waistline bodice area of this JSK from Baby, and they definitely untie as I go about my life. Nothing that running a stitch through wouldn't secure. Yeah, but it's still frustrating that I have to do it, and then of course tying it just right. So one of these days I'm going to have to sit down, lay it out, and tie it to my liking, and just run a stitch through it if I want it to hold shape. This is a cotton dress, so it wrinkles and is prone to wrinkling much more than you may have a poly dress. The difficulty here is going to be getting into those side folds. I noticed this too with my Ribbon Milky Sugar JSK, which has tiers of fabric, that steaming the inside of them can get quite hot. So I have used tongs before, like salad tongs for example, to hold the piece while I steam, but there are some more difficult areas, and taking care of the lace so that way it doesn't shrink up between wears is what I'm going to have to look more into. I think I'm just going to invest in a steaming mitt because I should have long ago, honestly. But this is my second piece where if I want to get those wrinkles out of the folds, it's going to be mandatory, I think. So the construction of these pieces are beautiful, and I'm really glad that Baby is continuing to re-release their old school and mid-school solid series. I feel like a solid piece can be very versatile and really fun to mess around with. Even in instances where I've messed around with styling a piece and it didn't go how I thought it would, I do feel like it was a good learning experience. Yeah, styling Lolita in a way that is more suitable for my day to day is something I want to continue working towards because I love these pieces and I want to be able to make sure I'm able to share them with the world. And I also just don't want it to be limited to bigger events and meets. So there we are. We have my 3 ways of styling this JSK, 2 very Lolita ways, and 1 in between casual style. And then we also have an exploration in the amount of poof that these newer classical series re-releases can hold. So at least for Ribbon Ribbon Gelato, I feel a lot more confident in saying that I can go low poof and I will feel just as good as if I were to go max poof. When you're looking at these pieces, a lot of it is going to depend on the shape of the dress itself. I know if we're looking at something like the Karami series, which is very high-waisted and very A-line, there's not going to be a lot of poof in that in general, whereas other pieces may be quite different from that. So there we are, my 3 stylings as well as an exploration in poof with the Baby the Starshine Bright Ribbon Ribbon Gelato 2023 re-release. So are there any classic Baby the Starshine Bright pieces that you are looking to get your hands on, and any particular colorways? Has this changed the way that you'd considered styling them, or have you styling tips for an old school piece or an old school styling piece? I would love to know. As for me, I of course am looking for Col de Paris, probably in black and white or the Saxon white, but it's not high on my priority right now, so I think for the time being, I will just enjoy the pieces I have. If I don't see you before next time, I hope you have a happy new year. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more of my stuff, definitely subscribe, and you can find me on Tumblr at Royal Sealy and on Instagram at Royal Sealy.